Or pnawn da, should I say as well. Do you want a little bit of background first of all? Just tiny bit of background. I've worked in procurement since about 86 or thereabouts. All of it in public sector, most of it in local government. We have been reorganised twice, I think, since I have been involved. That was an interesting experience in itself, but it does throw up all sorts of questions about the procurement function, where the procurement function fits. This really today is the story of where Carmarthenshire has got to in looking at one certain area. This is the Carmarthenshire solution. It's not being sold to you as a sort of a national solution or a great answer to everybody's panacea or whatever. This is just the way we've done it. And that's what I wanted to talk you through, really. There's been... Yeah. I can always do it here if it needs to be. Yeah. Sorry, technical hitch here. Not happy? Not happy. Okay, let's do it from here. That's okay, I'll do it from here. Look. Go on, I'll do it from here.
It wasn't connected, you can use it now.
Oh, all right. Thank you. I'll do it from here. Okay. There's already been a number of references this morning to the rugby. It's been a very pleasant week in Wales after last Saturday's result, but I'm not going to dwell on the rugby. I want to park that, leave it where it is. We're here to talk about, or I'm here to talk about, an approach to tackling low-value spend. And I think I better start with a couple of definitions, really, on that. That's the tackle. Low-value spend. Low-value spend in Carmarthenshire's book technically is under 75k, which is where our tender process kicks in. We do advertise everything on Sell to Wales, which is over 25k. So is 25k low-value spend, or is low-value spend somewhere below there? The experience we had with the Tenderwise project, which is a project I was involved with previously, we were in Aberystwyth actually, and somebody said to us, I dream of a 25k contract. The low value spend to me is the 3, 4, 5k stuff that I never see advertised. And that's been a dilemma for us ever since that was mentioned, really. How do we tackle that very low value spend? My background, it's very odd when it comes to procurement. I did not come up through the contracting side. I have very little interest in contracting, if I'm honest. I came up through the supply development side, working with the people who were bidding for work rather than the people who were putting the work out there. I think that does make me odd. So supply development, not contracting. And I come at the thing very much with a supplier's perspective, with a bidder's perspective rather than with a procurer's perspective. And I hope that that's had some influence in the way Carmarthenshire goes about things, really. I've tried to look at the problem for the bidder in the first instance. The question we were asked all those years ago, how do I find those low value, how do I find that low value business when it's not advertised? Some of it still isn't advertised. As I said, we use Sell to Wales. Anything over 25k goes on Sell to Wales. Some of the stuff below 25k goes on Sell to Wales. The intention is to get more and more stuff on that portal, and I'd like to see everything over 5k on there within a fairly short space of time, really, because that seems to be the only way of tackling the transparency issues that revolve around low value spend. Time is money for the bidder. So one of the key things for us has been looking at the documentation that we present and the way we present it. Is that something that is attractive to the bidder? It was really interesting to hear Colin talk before lunch about how, having moved from the public sector into the private sector, he wouldn't bid for public sector work. He finds it so expensive and so frustrating that he wouldn't even bid for it. I mean, that tells me that there is something very, very wrong with the way that we're doing it at the moment. That was the question that we were asked. How will we know about the opportunity? Will it be advertised at all? You know, there are certainly different ways of advertising it out there, and we all use a slightly different mix. Sell to Wales and Audio should be the common two that we all use. So you're fairly safe with those two, but in terms of the rest of it, each authority will have different rules in terms of where we advertise and what we advertise. And it's still true that a great deal of the low value spend, the very low value spend under 5k, isn't advertised at all. It's subject to 3 quotations. So the danger is that the buyers go back to the same people again and again seeking quotations, and it never brings new people into the market. What I say to suppliers when we're talking to suppliers, particularly about this problem, is they have to be proactive. The supplier, the bidder, has to be proactive in finding the work, and if that means making a nuisance of yourselves, by all means make a nuisance of yourself, because if that's the only way to do it, then that is the way to do it. In Carmarthenshire, we use 2 main ways of tackling this problem, really, in terms of market engagement, the early market engagement, where I will put people up in front of an audience of people. We'll advertise a market engagement. I will put the buyers up in front of those people, and the intention there is to have a chat about what we're trying to do, to help inform the spec, so we can get the spec as right as we can get it before we go out. The second approach then is the supply briefing event, where sometimes you'll do these too. But the second approach is the supply briefing event, where we have already decided what we're going to do. We've decided how we're going to do it, and we are telling you, the potential bidders, how it's going to work. That could involve all sorts of things. For instance, if we're going to use an electronic procurement method, we use Bravo generally. If we're using electronic procurement, we will have somebody from Bravo there, or somebody from Business Wales, the old Supply Development Service, not only to tell you what it looks like, but to show you how it works, what it looks like, what you'll need to do in terms of bidding, so that you're quite comfortable with that approach before we ever get to the live tender situation. Again, a question that we're very often asked: how do I make myself visible? There are loads of ways of doing it now. It used to be that there were meet the buyer events, and they'd be general events organised probably by Business Wales or somebody like that, who would put sort of 20 or 50 buyers in a room, invite every man and his dog. You'd have a walk around, spend half a day talking to people, might get some business out of it. Chances are you wouldn't, because it wasn't focused enough. You know, we don't do that anymore. We don't think that, particularly in the current climate, that bidders have the time to spend on that sort of event. I think if we're going to ask people to come and attend an event where you're meeting a buyer, it needs to be about an actual procurement that is going to take place at some stage. In some ways, the difficulty for us is deciding at what stage we call that meeting, because we want to get out, we want to get to you early enough to give you time to prepare for it. Now that could be 12 or even 18 months in advance, to build up the expertise that you will need, and possibly the collaboration that you will need to be able to bid for it. At what point do we do it? You don't want to do it too early, but you need to do it early enough, and that's always a difficult call for us, I think, really, and something that we do grapple with. There's a list there. That's not exhaustive by any means. There are loads of networking events. What I say to my potential bidders is be very selective in the ones you pick. Some are much better than others. Always go for targeted. Don't ever bother with a general one. I don't think it's worth the time and the effort, quite honestly. I'd always go for a targeted one myself. Every authority will have business development officers, probably in their regen department. Find out who they are, find out what they can do for you, because very often they can do a lot. A lot of information is available on the individual authority's website. The only difficulty for a bidder is that there are there are lots of websites there. There are, there are 22 local authorities, so there's information on 22 websites. It would be really nice to have one place where that information was available, but because we haven't standardised in terms of our approach and our financial thresholds, it doesn't really work at the moment. There's a lot of effort going in to getting that standardisation, but that's been happening now for 3 or 4 years, and personally I don't feel we're that much further forward. Problem for the buyer, I guess the 3 issues that I have up there, this is getting more and more complex really. The Welsh Procurement Policy Statement talks about a simplified standard process. We don't have that yet. So the way I've looked at it in Carmarthenshire is, in the absence of a general simplified standard process, I will look at my process and simplify and standardise that. That at least would help a little bit in terms of the authorities dealing with us. With the modernising the EU directives that's coming, part of that is a drive towards that simplification and a standard process as well. So that I think will help. But again, we're not there yet. So it's about doing what you can do when you can do it, I feel. There's two quotations really. Less is more is one that you always see. The Hans Hofmann, who's an abstract artist of all things, I really like that definition there. The ability to simplify means to eliminate the unnecessary so that the necessary may speak. That's the sort of ethos we've taken to examining our documentation. And we've worked with the winning and tendering team at Bangor University here to look at the documentation we were sending out, particularly for quotations, to try and hammer down through that documentation what we need to do to be able to deliver that simplified process that eliminates the unnecessary. And these are the sort of conclusions we've come to, really. The Contracts Remedies Directive kicked in some years ago now, a couple of years ago now. That scared the living bejesus out of every procurement manager in all the local authorities. And we were risk averse to start with, we became even more risk averse. And that approach of trying to dot every I and cross every T, in Carmarthenshire certainly, filtered down to the lowest value procurement. We were sending out documentation on quotations that was about half an inch thick. Every question in the book was in there. We tried to cover every base. It really was. And I'm not saying that approach is wrong, but that approach only works where you're dealing with the high value, high risk stuff. You shouldn't and can't apply it to the low value stuff, because you kill interest in that work, really, and that's what we were finding. People were saying what Colin was saying this morning. It's not worth it. There's too much hassle. It's so expensive to bid that we won't bid. I think that approach created a burden for the buyer and the seller, really. And working with Pedro, what we started to do was to look at what we were doing now. We fundamentally examined what we were doing, clean sheet of paper. The original intention was, and Pedro will remember it, I know, on the first day, we looked at the documentation we were sending out, which was about 35 pages, and we said, can we condense this into one sheet of A4? And we thought we could. We thought we'd have a pretty good go at this. We didn't get down to one sheet of paper, and it was an interesting journey, I think, would be the way of describing it. Let's see where we sort of did get to. Forget, I'll do it here. It's easy here. So, what do we find? All style documentation, significant cost to bid, response is often low. Colin Cram's statement this morning, it's not worth bothering, But you're putting a quotation out for 15 grand, it's going to cost me a fortune to bid for it. It'll take ages, it's just too much hassle, really. Our focus was entirely on the process. Have we got the process right? You almost lost sight of what you were trying to do. The whole purpose of the thing, was to get the thing there set up and done. So, simplified documentation. The whole point is that there has to be little upfront cost to bid. That way, you'll get people's interest. Our focus should be on the quality of the bid, not the process. The process should be as simple as we can make it. It's the information coming back is what we need, really. Again, looking at it from our perspective, we'd go out on a quotation, maybe spending, I don't know, £30,000. We would have financials from everybody. We would have sustainability statements. We'd have health and safety statements. We'd have equality statements. We'd have maybe, I don't know, say 20 responses. We would look at 20 responses. We do all the financials for 20 companies. We do the whole shooting match, 19 of which were put to one side generally. We never looked at them again. So we questioned that need to be putting everybody through that misery and putting ourselves through that misery. What we looked at was a simplified set of documents that concentrated the effort on one set of relevant submissions. So how do we do that? What we said to them was, we'll turn this thing on the head. Instead of asking you for all this information, we'll ask you whether you have that information. Would you be able to self-certify that you have all these things in place? And if it turns out that you are the successful bidder, the preferred bidder, we'll have a look at it. But why are we asking you to incur massive cost in submitting this stuff? And why are we incurring cost in analysing it when the majority of it will never get used again? It was just insane. So, what we said is, okay, we're asking you for the information that'll be used only if you're selected as the preferred organisation. The rest of it is a straightforward tick box. Have you got it or not? And we make it very clear in terms of what we put up there. You'll have 10 days to provide the information. If you can't say yes to anything on the checklist, then you won't be considered because you are self-certifying. It's a pass-fail basis. It's very straightforward. Please do not submit a quotation unless you are prepared to tick yes to all the points below. So we've turned this thing on its head now. Instead of getting all the information, analysing it all, and then deciding who we want, we're saying, have you got it? If you've got it, great, tick the box. And if we think we can work with you, if you were the preferred bidder, if you've won the rest of the competition, we'll have a look at that stuff to make sure that it's all there and all square with us. Bit of a leap of faith, really, that was. And we were sceptical. We were very sceptical. We sat down with Pedro and said, look, I'm not sure whether this is going to work. There's all sorts of possibilities here for us to fall over, Bidders will make false claims. They'll self-certify and they won't have got the stuff. Bidders won't submit the details. They won't understand the approach. We'll constantly, you'll be picking your preferred supplier. They won't have it. You'll drop down. They won't have it. You'll drop, You'll be creating an industry for yourself in trying to come to a point at which you've got a supplier you can work with. Feedback to date, and this is very early days for us. We've only been doing this for about 3 months now, I suppose. We've used the simplified procedure 12 times. 6 of them have been awarded and have been very positive in terms of outcome. We've had one where there were no bidders, so we've had to go back out. And constantly we're asking ourselves, depending on the value of the spend, do we put this on sell to Wales? And I think the one where we went back out was, I think it was a £15,000 one, where we didn't put it on sell to Wales originally, didn't get a response, we've gone out now and put it on sell to Wales. The other thing that we're doing as well, which I think is important really in terms of this change in approach. What we're trying to do is to capture these people's interest in this work. Make it cheap to bid, make it easy to bid, capture their interest. That relies on them self-selecting. So how can you make it easy for them to self-select? And one of the ideas we came up with was, well, why not include the spec in the advert? If it's a straightforward, these quotations are generally straightforward stuff. So put the spec in the advert. So as soon as a company looks at the advert, they'll know whether they're interested or not. They'll know whether they're interested in bidding. So that would eliminate any cost. If they look at it and they think, no, it's not for us, that eliminates all cost of bidding. You know, it's much more efficient for them and for us. One of the ones, the comment at the bottom there, straightforward, easy to follow and quick and cause minimum disruption. That was an across Wales. It was a local investment fund appraisal. And that was an across Wales. The tender evaluation panel was made up of people from Anglesey to Cardiff, really. There was one virtual meeting to look at the successful outcome there. It was very quick, it was very straightforward and very cost effective. And I think in those areas where there are wider collaborations involved, if we could all agree to adopt this approach, we would save an absolute fortune between us. I'm convinced of it. This is the one that we looked at in detail, which is a mid and final term evaluation of a town centre regeneration. So it's consultancy really we're buying. Where we were before, it would have been 14 attachments. It was now 1. 14 suppliers accessed the document. Spec was included in the advert. Out of the 14, we received 3 submissions. Now we think, and it's, as I say, it's very early days, but we think that was because there was a lot of self-selection going on. They were deciding very early, without incurring any cost, this is for me, this is not for me. 3 bids. You're worried now about the quality of the bid. Well, 2 of the bids scored more than 80% on quality. So they understood it, they got it, you know, they really did get it. The third bid was a good bid, but the first 2 bids were of really high quality. So in terms of the question, you know, is everybody happy? Price range, 20% between the highest and lowest. We didn't give an indication of budget, and we had a discussion with the funding body about that. WAFO generally like you to tell them what the budget is. We thought, no, we won't do that. We'll go out and see what comes back in. And again, with a 20% range between the highest and lowest, the 3 people who bid understood what was required of them very, very clearly, which is why those prices were so tight. You know, they really did get it. There were lots of advantages that worked in terms of internal cost. When we were looking at all those documents, you were talking about a whole group of accountants, a whole group of lawyers, a whole group of health and safety people who were involved in analysing all that early stuff. All that went out through the window. So in terms of the time taken and the cost, the time taken was normally measured in weeks, 10, 13, 14 weeks. So far we've halved that. We think we can do better than that again, because it's about getting our own processes in shape inside the organisation. So in terms of has it worked for us? Is everybody happy? Yes, timescales are better, it's cheaper, it's faster, we're getting good returns. You bet your lives we're happy. We're the Welshmen, we're the ones smiling. Thanks for your time. Thank you.